building activities on FPAS, and FPAS is a tool that is very important to our banks, and we are requesting the Bank of Uganda to host the next FPAS working group meeting so that they continue the good work they have been doing, but we are recommending that the next workshop should focus on incorporating climate change in the FPAS framework. Then on harmonization of policies and standards of production of BOP statistics, there is one item there that we are just requesting the governors to take note, that is number 5. And then in the next item, we are requesting the governors to approve that, to direct the EAC Secretariat to liaise with Bank of South Sudan to provide further support in the compilation of BOP. The next one, the Bank of Uganda was supposed to do an analysis of the effectiveness of monetary policy communication. The approach they wanted to use is going to take long to implement, so we are proposing an alternative approach that they can use as they collect more data. And finally, under that item, we are requesting the Economic Affairs, that the governors approve that Economic Affairs and Coordination Subcommittee review the draft EAC Monetary Policy Communication Framework and finalize it by December. Here, governors, you had asked us to prepare a common monetary policy communication framework. We had a meeting, a draft framework was developed, but the senior officials feel it is still too raw, and therefore this team needs to relocate it. Number 7 is just for governors to note, that is on page 19 of the report. And then number 8 is on dedicated sessions for the Bank of Southern Sudan. There are areas where the Bank of South Sudan has identified that they need further support, so that is what is covered in number 8, and the senior officials would like the governors to approve that this support continues. Number 9, governors, on the page 20, is also just for the governors to take note that the assignment they had given us to review the challenges faced by EAC partner states and come up with the proposed recommendations. This was done, and a report on this will be tabled to the Sectoral Council on Finance and Economic Affairs in 2 weeks' time. Number 10, on page 21, there are issues that were related to IT, and on these ones, there has been a delay in implementation, but we have agreed that the National Bank of Rwanda will convene a meeting to deal with those issues. That is number 10. And then number 11, we would like the governors to direct the IT Technical Working Group to hold a virtual meeting to address one of the issues that has been pending for some time, and this should be done by end June. On Risk Management Technical Working Group, again, they had assignments to work on, and we have reported the status of each of those. There are countries that managed to complete what was supposed to be done, and we are asking the governors to take note. And again, there are certain requests that this technical working group had. They were very elaborate, governors, and we looked at them, but we proposed that we reduce those to a limited number that is critical, and that is what we are recommending their governors, for them to hold a meeting to develop common key risk indicators for the region and review, update the EAC risk management framework that was developed in 2013. This we feel is outdated, and therefore they need to work on that. On the HR working group, from number 13, here basically we are reporting what the governors had assigned for the East African Community Central Banking course that was to be done. Yes, they did it. This has been previously on several changing themes. So they are proposing next year to take the theme on national payment system. And in addition to that, governors, on page 23, they are requesting governors to approve a budget of 35,000 for mounting that course this year. I may need to mention on their behalf, honorable governors, that the 35,000 is not a blanket check. Usually what they do is whatever part of this budget they use, that is what will be, they'll request the central banks to pay. Like last year, they requested for 32,600, they only spent 26,000, and that is what the central banks will be billed. Now, the senior officials feel that this course has been implemented in a different way from what the others have done before, like the other technical working groups and subcommittees. So we will need to sit with the technical working group, the HR technical working group, to streamline how this is done going forward. Now, on the next one, number 14, the banking certification course. Again, here the HR technical working group came up with a proposal that we thought is too big and may end up being costly, and there are elements that we thought they could streamline better. So we are recommending that we hold a meeting with them to work with them on establishing the best structures for implementing the banking certification course. That is what is on page 24, so that we have a very solid ground of implementing that course. Number 15 on page 25, governors, this is on a course on strategic leadership. They have been implementing this every year. They successfully implemented the one of last year. They are recommending to go ahead and do this next year at a cost of maximum 24,000. That is what we are kindly requesting the governors to approve. The legal technical working group had identified several areas that required harmonization of laws in member countries, laws and regulations. Now, they have not given the governors an updated report on how far the harmonization has gone. So what we are kindly requesting is that the governors approve that they go back, review progress, and report to the governors in the next meeting how far the harmonization has gone. Number 17 on page 27, governors, is on the impact of IFRS 9. What we are requesting the governors to approve is that the partner state central bank should continue implementing the agreed harmonization standards and give a report in the next MAC meeting. And of course, there are also areas where our partner state central banks require support from each other. We are recommending that the governors authorize that support. And then the central banks will also report progress on implementation of some aspects of IFRS 9 in the next MAC meeting. On number 18, page 28, governors, on harmonization of financial reporting standards, again, we are requesting the governors to take note of progress, and we are requesting the central bank, the governors, to approve that the partner state central banks continue adopting the reporting adopting and reporting financial ratios as agreed. There are specific ratios that have been agreed, and the central banks are being urged to continue adopting them and reporting on how far they have gone. On paid-up capital, again, we are asking the governors to take note of the progress made here by different partner states and to urge partner state central banks to expedite implementation of the capital adequacy and capital impairment framework. And we are requesting the Bank of Uganda to take the lead in pushing that agenda forward. And that is the set of requests from the Economic Affairs and Coordination Subcommittee. Then we have a few asks from the Bank Supervision and Financial Stability Subcommittee, starting on page 29. Number one of them is request for some partner states to issue guidance notes with respect to IFRS 9. And then in number two, we are requesting banks to undertake peer review of their self-assessments on their compliance with consolidated convergence criteria. Number three, on page 30, this is not number three, still number two, on one of the items that were ongoing, partner state central banks to implement the convergence criteria on licensing requirements by 2026. There are some partner states that had not done the implementation. The next item, just before we go down to number three, partner states central banks except Bank of Tanzania to implement the minimum standards on cloud computing. The Bank of Tanzania governors, as you can see in the update, has done this assignment, and therefore it's the remaining central banks we are asking to implement. The next item, we are requesting central banks to implement convergence criteria on shared services. Then below that, we are requesting the central banks to continue implementing reforms aimed at improving collateral valuation. We noted that the BNR has gone very far in implementing this, and we congratulate them for a job well done. Other countries should go on with the implementation. Of course, they have stated to the governors the status of implementation. And then in number 3, developing the harmonization criteria and standards of Basel core principles. Here on page 31 at the bottom, and the next page, partner state central banks to update their Basel core principles self-assessments based on the 2024 revised Basel core principles to determine status of compliance, and the partner state central banks to address gaps to comply with the 29 Basel core principles by 2026. We have given notes on the status of implementation of those by each country, where the gaps are, which each country is supposed to address. On page 33, Honorable Governors, there are several partner state central banks that we are asking, the CBK, Bank of Tanzania, Bank of South Sudan, Bank of Uganda, to update the next MAC meeting on the enactments and amendments of banking laws and regulations to comply with the remaining Basel core principles. There are certain amendments that they were meant to go and enact in their countries. And then at the bottom of page 33, governors to request the EAC Secretariat to facilitate capacity enhancement on the revised assessment methodology by December 2024. Then governors to approve a peer review of the revised Basel core principles. The dates that are there, we think they are flexible enough to allow us to implement, but we will be happy to amend if the governors advise otherwise. On crisis management, governors on page 35, there are specific central banks that have been asked to complete their national crisis management frameworks in line with the MAC criteria by 2026. At the bottom of page 35, partner state central banks except BOU to follow up and report on the implementation of harmonized criteria for deposit protection schemes. Then on page 36, governors, the partner state central banks to initiate the establishment of resolution fund, considering financing from central banks, deposit insurance, and contribution from the supervised institutions. And then partner state central banks to initiate the establishment of a mechanism for backstop funding from government in case of systemic crisis. Then some specific central banks have been requested to finalize their contingency plans in line with agreed Monetary Affairs Committee criteria. And finally, we are requesting the governors to approve the framework for conducting resolvability assessment of banks. Now, regional contingency framework, recovery and resolution planning framework, and crisis resolution guidelines. Our subcommittee on banking supervision and financial stability went thoroughly through this, and they are satisfied that the governors could grant us their approval, and these are annexed to the report. So we are kindly requesting the governors to approve those. In the next item on page 38, we are requesting specific central banks to provide final comments on the Memorandum of Understanding for Information Sharing for Cross-Border Crisis Preparedness, Management and Resolution, so that those can be finalized. Then below that, we are requesting specific central banks to finalize and operationalize their emergency liquidity assistance frameworks in line with the agreed key principles by next MAC meeting. Below that, we are requesting the Bank of the Republic of Burundi to finalize and issue its prompt corrective action regulations before the next MAC meeting. And then CBK, just above 5, CBK to provide an update on the progress of revision of its prompt corrective action framework by the next MAC meeting. On number 5, promotion of credit reference bureaus is only one member country we are requesting to report progress. Number 6, policy towards coordinated financial services regulatory framework. We are requesting one partner state to finalize and execute MOU with other financial sector regulators. Number 6, on business continuity management, we are asking the governor on page 39 to take note. And then number 8, on mitigating adverse effects of financial economic crisis, we are asking all partner state central banks except NBR to continue liaising with the relevant authorities and addressing legal constraints relating to successful implementation of Basel III and G20 recommendations. Under the same item at the bottom, we are requesting the governors to approve the template for annual supervisory information sharing for implementation. Again, that subcommittee thoroughly reviewed the template and they are satisfied that the governors could kindly give us an approval of that template. Below that, and spilling over into page 41, there are specific partner state central banks to continue following up on the signing of MOUs with relevant authorities to formalize information sharing arrangements. And at the bottom of page 41, 2 partner state central banks to forward the details of pending MOUs to AACB by June, so that AACB can help us follow up with the banks outside the region that we are supposed to be signing those MOUs with. And number 9, on page 42, for the governors who have the same copy, the final copy, partner state central banks to address data gaps and complete compilation of encouraged financial soundness indicators for DTs, OFCs, and corporations. Then on top of page 43, under the same item on macroprudential analysis, stress testing, and statistics, the partner state central banks to continue collaborating with the East African Project on Statistics to develop capacity on revised financial soundness indicators. And then in the middle of page 43, partner state central banks to compile financial soundness indicators for households and real estate by December 2026. And governors, we are kindly requesting the governors to direct the EAC Secretariat to support partner states, or request the EAC Secretariat to support partner states in compilation on the remaining FSIs for real estate and household. At the bottom, where the CBK was expected to liaise with the EAC Secretariat on a software that is supposed to be used for compilation of some data, we are requesting the CBK to formally liaise with the EAC Secretariat. They had had informal consultations, but we want it on record that these discussions are going on. And then so that portal or dashboard is set up. At the bottom, under page 44, under macroprudential analysis and stress testing, the first item is just for governors to take note. The second item is we are requesting the Bank of South Sudan to kindly host the next meeting of that team. And then partner state central banks to continue taking appropriate policy actions on risk identified in the regional risk assessment and stress testing report, including specific measures to mitigate the impact of macroeconomic shocks. Again, on page 45, governors to approve the framework for financial stability assessment for non-bank financial institutions focusing on insurance, pension, and payment system. Again, our team reviewed this, and they are kindly requesting the governor to approve the framework. The copy of the same is attached. Now, governors again are requested to approve development of a guideline on network analysis for regional interconnectedness of banks and payment service providers. And finally, at the bottom of page 45, partner states central banks update macroprudential framework to include climate change and implications of technological innovations. Next, on page 46, partner states central banks will develop supervisory frameworks on climate change and sustainable financing, and CBK is being requested to take the lead. Partner states central banks to develop supervisory frameworks on fintech and digital financial services. And we are kindly requesting Bank of Tanzania to take the lead for us on that. The next item on page 47, where Bank of Rwanda was to organize a capacity building workshop for partner state central banks on macro-prudential modeling by next MAC meeting, is just for governors to take note of progress of what has been done. The next item, the last item for this subcommittee on page 48 is just for some 3 partner state central banks to finalize the implementation of the harmonized key criteria of macroprudential policy by 2026. Then on financial markets and payment subcommittee, honorable governors, there are also a few requests. First, the first item on liquidity management frameworks is for the governors to take note. The next item below that is for one of the partner state central banks to report progress during the next MAC meeting. Then we are requesting the governors to take note in the middle part of page 49. And then one partner state central bank to fast track implementation of the pricing methodology for standing facilities and report in the next meeting. And we are asking also Bank of Uganda to report in the next meeting. At the bottom, the issue dealing with operational framework for foreign exchange management and monetary operations, we are just asking the governors to take note of the progress that has been made on the assignment that was given to CBK. On top of page 50, we are asking the governors to approve that CBK continues compiling and analyzing the data on exchange rate developments on quarterly basis and share with partner state central banks. At the bottom, one item there is for governors to take note, and the next item is for the governors to authorize that the Bank of Tanzania continues analyzing data for monetary operations on a quarterly basis and share the report with partner state central banks. We have found the information very useful, and we would like that to continue. At the bottom, partner state central banks to align in accordance with market conventions and report progress in the next meeting. And on top of page 51, on review of harmonized regional conventions and market practices, partner state central banks to update the harmonized market conventions to align with the current market development. And we are kindly requesting Bank of Tanzania to take the lead in organizing us to do that. At the middle of page 51, the EAC Secretariat to provide updates to us. I think, governors, this is something that we need to rephrase in terms of how this appears, but we have agreed with the Secretariat on how the rephrasing of that would be done. Because obviously, whatever happens, any matter that has gone to those other levels, the EAC Secretariat will definitely give an update. And number 4 on page 51, under the framework for market makers for government securities, again, we are requesting that the EAC Secretariat to update after the approval of this request by sphere. Again, we may need to rephrase that, but we have agreed with the Secretariat how we can rephrase the request for approval. On benchmark bonds, number 5 of page 52, there are 2 partner state central banks that we are requesting to report progress in the next MAC meeting. And then on cross-border trading of government securities, the first line is just request the governors to take note of progress. And then secondly, we are requesting governors to approve that the EAC Secretariat convenes a joint meeting between the technical working group and the legal technical working group to review the council directives and clarify areas of concern. There were areas that the council has given several directives that touch on legal matters that need to be reviewed by this working group. And then at the bottom, this team is also requesting the EAC Secretariat to convene a meeting to identify the appropriate infrastructure to facilitate cross-border trading of government securities. Again, here, the National Bank of Rwanda will work with the EAC Secretariat to advance that request. Capacity building for market makers. Here, again, we are requesting one partner state to report progress on the adoption of ACI professional qualification in the next MAC meeting. The next one, under deepening financial markets, is CBK to report progress in the next meeting. And at the top of page 54, partner states to fast-track development of fixed income market strategy and report progress in the next MAC meeting. Integration of payment systems in the EAC governance at the bottom of page 54, we are requesting that partner state central banks to continue promoting the usage of IPS at the national level and to make the necessary budgetary provisions as they await the rollout of the regional publicity and promotional activities of the IPS by the EAC Secretariat. The progress, a lot of progress has been made towards the promotional activities, and this is our ask for this particular activity governance. Then secondly, partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to convene a joint meeting of MAC subcommittees to discuss the challenges related to the uptake of IPS. And we are requesting the Bank of Tanzania to take lead in convening that meeting. At the bottom of page 54 and spilling over to page 55, the partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to consider developing a dashboard to facilitate effective monitoring of IPS performance. And here again, we are requesting BOT to take the lead. Here, Honorable Governors, basically, we have been sharing data on a quarterly basis, and we think that is late. So we need to work together with the EAC Secretariat to come up with a dashboard where we can send data more frequently so that the data can be received much quicker than waiting for each quarter to end. Because at the end of the quarter, the payment data is actually a bit late. So we want more frequent data, more up-to-date data to be provided. The next item on page 55, the second bullet there, partner state central banks live on IPS to include automatic confirmation for IPS messages, and there is what they are calling field 59F requirement in SWIFT ISO. We requested them to brief the governors on what the jargon of 59F is. I hope they did so. And if they didn't so, governors, I hope you will punish them directly, not the rapporteur. Then at the second last bullet, partner state central banks to engage their respective vendors to incorporate IPS ISO 20022 migration guideline in their respective RTGS upgrade. And we are requesting Bank of Tanzania to lead us in this. The partner state central banks to complete changes in participation agreement after completion of ISO 20022 migration in IPS and report progress in the next meeting. We are requesting CBK to take the lead in coordinating us towards achieving this request. And the next one is on page 56 in the middle, BRB to fast track joining IPS and report progress in the next meeting. EAC Secretariat to facilitate both technical support and capacity building on IPS, connectivity and operation. And then towards the bottom, governors to take note of progress made on what was assigned previously. And secondly, partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to complete procurement process by June 2024 and commence the implementation. And CBK is being kindly requested to take the lead on this. On page 57, partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to report progress on the consultancy services for the feasibility study of IPS2 in the next MAC meeting. Then EAC Secretariat to fast track the procurement process for the IPS help desk and report the progress in the next MAC meeting. At the bottom of page 57, one item there is just governors to take note of progress made And then a request is EAC Secretariat to follow up with the Central Bank of DRC to expedite the signing of the addendum to the MOU on currency convertibility. Here, governors, we can report that the Central Bank of DRC had sent a few questions for us to answer, which we have answered this week, and we are hoping that the EAC Secretariat will give them a response early next week so that it can facilitate the signing of the MOU. Then on page 58, I'm just approaching the end, Honorable Governors. The first bullet towards the top, partner states central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to convene a joint meeting of monetary affairs subcommittees to discuss modalities of adoption of the previous recommendations on the issue of currency convertibility, repatriation, and acceptability. Secondly, partner state central banks to fast-track the execution of the addendum to the IFS participation agreement with the commercial banks by 2024. And we are requesting the Bank of Uganda to take the lead in making us achieve that request. Bank of South Sudan in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to complete implementation of ATS Plus by December, and partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC to continue offering technical support to Bank of South Sudan implementation of ATS Plus implementation. There is a repetition there that we'll remove. Then at the bottom of page 59, partner says central banks to continue with the implementation of the interoperability at national level and report progress in the next bank meeting, and we are requesting Bank of Rwanda to take the lead. On page 60, we are requesting governors to take notes of progress on what has happened with PAPs, where some partner states have signed, some partner states are still considering it. And then the second bullet there, the subcommittee is recommending that PAPs should be used for business use cases not covered by IPS so as to protect the gains already made in IPS to aid in achieving the objectives of the monetary union. And then third recommendation by this subcommittee is that the partner state central banks should adopt PAP's commercial bank model. Oh, thank you very much. And then at the bottom, which is one of our, the second last item, harmonization of payment system, legal, regulatory framework and standards. We are requesting one partner state to expedite the enactment of NPS law and report progress, and then partner state central banks to continue to update the legal and regulatory frameworks based on the current market trend and best practices. And finally, partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to convene a meeting to harmonize the recommended changes in the legal and regulatory framework. And here, for those two, we are requesting Bank of Uganda to take the lead. Number 11, partner state central banks, and that is spilling into page 62, the second last page. The partner state central banks to continue conducting joint oversight exercise and implement the recommendations. And we are requesting the Bank of the Republic of Burundi to host the next joint oversight meeting by December 2024. At the bottom, number 12, which is the second last issue, the EAC Payment Systems Master Plan, we are requesting governors to take note of the progress in the development of the master plan, and then we are requesting the EAC Secretariats in liaison with the partner state central bank to report the progress of the development and implementation of the master plan. The EAC Secretariat in collaboration with partner state central banks to constitute a steering committee composed of heads of payment system to provide leadership and ownership of the development of the master plan. They have convinced us governors that this is not just for seeking per diem, but for serious work. The second last item there, each partner state central bank to nominate 2 technical persons, one to facilitate the coordination of the EAC Regional Payment System Master Plan project, and the other to facilitate coordination of the EAC Regulatory Framework for Cross-Border Mobile Money Transactions project at the national level. And the Central Bank of Kenya has been requested to coordinate that exercise. And finally, honorable governors, in the last item, number 13, under this subcommittee, partner state central banks in liaison with the EAC Secretariat to take up the IMFTA on CBDC for cross-border payments and report progress in the next MAC meeting. Honorable governors, that is the long report, and we stand to be guided by the honorable governors, or if there are any questions I can respond to, or the heads of the different subcommittees can also help me respond to those questions. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, honorable governors. And should the governors want to comment, we just request you to raise your tag like this, and then the chairman will recognize you.
Thank you, Raphael. I honestly did not think you'd be able to go. You would be able to go through this report so quickly. I thought we would last up to 3 hours. So congratulations. Mine are not major interventions. Just on item number 3. I think at the end of every section, there's a recommendation, and it's not clear exactly under the status of implementation of the EAC macroeconomic convergence criteria. Well, this is just an observation. Is there a recommendation at the end? So maybe you could look and see whether you need to make a specific recommendation. Second is just the consistency in the wording of the recommendations. I think, for example, just to give you an example, after item number 6 on page 11, you have, for example, there you're recommending governors to approve the EAC guidelines on compilation of monetary and financial statistics. So that's very clear. But then the next recommendation, it's not clear whether you are addressing yourself directly to the EAC Secretariat, or you're asking the governors to direct the EAC Secretariat to work with partner states. And I think there are quite a number of those. I think maybe just if you could review, your team could review the format of the recommendation so that it's clear that it's the technical, the experts who are now requesting the governors to do something. On this issue of the additional operational targets for international reserves adequacy, again, the text seems to say that already these, the 2 additional ones, which is basically the level of reserve money to M2, and also the stock of short-term debt falling due in the next 1 year, that had already been adopted by governors. So I don't understand what this recommendation, the second recommendation, exactly what it's about. It seems to be defining. It seems to be defining what the stock of short-term public and private external debt is. And since was already approved in the past, I'm not exactly sure what it is that you're asking the governors to do. whether it's to agree to this definition or, so maybe you could clarify that. On page number 19 was the issue of the communication framework, the monetary policy communication framework, which the CBK was to take the lead. But I noticed that once the framework, a draft framework was circulated to member EAC countries, only the Bank of Tanzania has responded. But now your recommendation is for the Economic Affairs and Coordination Subcommittee to review the draft EAC Monetary Policy Communication Framework and to finalize it by December of 2024, but for the BOT to take the lead. And you know, I know even at work, the most efficient and hardworking person is the one that gets most of the work. And I can see you are giving it to Bank of Tanzania. You know, Tanzania is the closest to meeting all the convergence criteria. So I can see the tendency to want to give Bank of Tanzania everything. So what I could suggest, if Bank of Tanzania is agreeable, that we continue, the CBK continues to take the lead in this particular area, but should BOT insist, I'm also okay with that. Then there was the issue of the Basel core principles on page 34. And the timelines where you're requesting governors to approve a peer review of the revised BCP self-assessments. And the first is Bank of Burundi by December 2025. And the last one is Bank of Rwanda and Bank of Tanzania in 2028. You know, that's 4 years from now, and I'm convinced that this can be done sooner instead of waiting for 4 years to complete that exercise. Then finally, on page 60, on the issue of the PAPs to be used as a business case, I would suggest, because I know we all want to have a regional approach, although there have been some bilateral discussions, perhaps, and some individual EAC countries. And perhaps I know we are working on EAPS, it's the EAPS 2, which I think would even provide some enhanced connectivity between the EAC 2 and other payment infrastructure systems. So I would also maybe suggest that maybe in the recommendations we recommend to the Secretariat to fast track this implementation of the EAPS 2 with a view to enhancing that connectivity between the EAPS and other payment infrastructure systems. I think that's it, Chairman.
Thank you, Rafael, for this elaborate presentation. Just two general observations. Just like Governor Kamau, I see that on page 6, where you have the convergency criteria. From the report and from the comments made by the governors in the morning, it's really clear that countries are at a different stage in their march toward meeting those. And it seemed like if one country has an issue with a ceiling on a deficit, then another country has something alongside the reserve coverage. And so in this case, while we have indicated there what they are, potentially we may have to take a decision on those, to say what are we doing as a body regarding those. Can we study them and see as we move toward the 2028, where we are expected to converge on those, what happens if we don't converge on those? But in the meantime, they are just hanging there. So I agree with him that we need to do something about those. If there's a recommendation for us to say, let us take a critical study of all the 4 convergent criteria, then that should be the way to go. On page 18, and this is just a comment, again, the climate change has been emphasized again in the morning by all the governors. And for us, we believe this is an issue that is appropriate and it deserves to be there. I'm just making a comment that a reference to climate change throughout the text deserves to be given a high attention. On page 21, and this is the case across the board, I've seen where we are, this is just the date. In some places, there are some areas where we would like to see a report done by 2025 or 2026. While 2026 and 2027 might be in the field, the reference to 2025 is too near. Let me just take, for example, on page 26, there's a reference to cloud computing, and where banks are expected to work to achieving that recommendation, but it's also an area where all the central banks are not on the same page. And in this case, what is the starting point? What is the basic? What is really expected of the countries here, especially those that are coming far behind? I can just say South Sudan is one of those coming from far behind. On several areas where a reference has been made to South Sudan to take lead, I can say we are comparable with those, and I'm also very happy that the technical working groups in your deliberation has taken into account the capacity needs of South Sudan, and therefore a number of things that have been recommended for us to take note or to take lead in are those that we can commit to deliver on. This is just to tell the governors that South Sudan is comparable with recommendations that have been made and where we are supposed to take lead. Except in areas where we are supposed to have a footprint in the past time. For example, the ELA, the emergency liquidity aspect. That part is an area where maybe we may need more support from the other member states. I have seen also a reference to a need to forward or to share pending MOUs. This is something I've seen even in last year where letters were just written and coming from West Africa. I've seen some coming from East Africa requiring the bank to forward those. And my question here is that what has been preventing those from happening? Has there been a communication issue, or has there been a need to revise some of those pending MOUs? The last 2 points, one is on IPS best PAPs. While on the EAC side, this is at home, IPS, and we are now at stage 2. It's good that we are moving toward streamlining payment system in the region, but I can also see on the other side that there's a huge attempt at the continental level with regard to Pan-African payment system, I've been seeing several push, even when we were in Marrakesh last year, and this year in Washington. I have seen members or officials from PAPs coming on board to inquire and to find out if those of us that are still beyond are willing to take into account and to study and to join. And so what is our stand here really? The way I read that is like we are interfacing the two. Let's continue with IPS, but if there are gaps, let's bring on board the PAPs. But where is the interface? What if there are conflict here? Where do we end up in the end? Because I believe one of them has to take precedent. And then finally, is also on the central bank digital currencies. This is also an area where we are at a different stage. There are those of us who have really gone far ahead. They have done pilot, but there are some that are far beyond, that have not even that have not been set down to say what to do, except to say, let's wait and see what is happening in the region. And that may be the approach in most places, a matter of waiting and see. So what exactly are we doing here with regard to this, and especially for those that are behind? How do we bring them forward so that they are on the same page with those of us that are doing the pilots? And even if they are moving, like for example, the Hamas and Nigeria with E-Naira. With this, let me just say thank you, and I'll pass the mic to the next governor that wants to intervene.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would also like to extend my appreciation to the technical team for the good job they have done so far, which has actually simplified our work, because when you go through the entire document, you can see everything has been put in the document very clearly. And of course, I really appreciate and propose to be adopted on all the areas where they have proposed it to take note and adopt, as well as the areas where they have requested our approval. Chair, I wanted just to comment on a few areas. One is on the currency convertibility. I remember last year we signed the document, the MOU, which actually had a number of issues, as we agreed before, that will continue transacting and exchanging our currencies. And I remember last time I raised the issue based on our experience that we had with our neighbors on our southern border, he says Zambia. But I wanted to raise this again to see if we proceed with the issue of convertibility in terms of maybe transacting between two borders. If we will not be having a balanced trade between two countries, means it will not happen where one country will be having maybe excess funds of the other country. Now, I don't know how have you put maybe the modality in terms of settlement from the one who will be having excess or shortage in order to balance, and should it be occur within what period of time? Because I remember in Zambia, for example, since 2017, we have been holding kwacha worth more than 100 million USD, and up to this moment, you have not been able to settle the same amount, because when we informed our colleagues that you look now For us, we have been more generous to accommodate and take all the kwacha in Tanzania. But when we wanted to send back, they said they cannot settle those amounts because they don't have enough dollars. So I don't know maybe how you have deliberated on this issue and how will it be undertaken as we continue to operate between maybe more than one country within our region. My second issue is on, of course, the issue that has been raised with regards to convergence criteria. I remember in the EAC meeting last June, during the Ministers' Council, we also raised this concern that, okay, if we have an expectation of approving or implementing our common monetary union by 2031, whereby initially we expect maybe all the country will meet those criteria for 3 consecutive years. And as of this year, if you went through, I believe you have gone through all the criteria. And I found that most of the countries have not yet been able to meet those criteria. And I was now considering that, okay, if our roadmap will take us up to 2031, and we need to meet those criteria for 3 consecutive years, and up to this moment we haven't been able to meet those criteria, means there are 2 thoughts. Either those criteria which we set by that time might not be valid as of this time, we need to revive them, or sometimes we need maybe to rethink or to undertake a comprehensive study and come up with the appropriate criteria which will enable us to reach to that level. Because the way I can see, probably if we'll use the normal criteria, probably by 2031, we'll probably extend time because all of us will not meet those criteria. So I wanted maybe to get it from the Secretariat, if you had good time to deliberate on this, and if you have been thinking on the way we can really meet those criteria, what should we do? Of course, next issue was on, of course, other concerns have already been raised, but I wanted to just touch a little bit on the issues of IPS versus PAPS. I understand that we have been implementing different mechanisms where each country has their own payment systems, but as a region, we agreed together to use the IPS, and understand the progress made by PAPS under the African Bank, whom have been insisting, and of course they had a conversation in different sessions just to convince different countries to use the PAPS. But I was thinking that if we have already adopted IPS, and at the same time we want to use PAPS, we'll be having 2 payment systems at a time, which might not be more useful. So I remember when senior people from PAPS engaged Tanzania, we submitted our reservations, which have not yet been addressed so far and have seen it in the report, but I'm aware, as have been put here, that some of the countries have already signed the agreement to adopt usage of PAPs. Now I was trying to think that, okay, if we'll be having PAPs in place, at the same time IPS, I don't know now how, to what extent those transactions will be undertaken under PAPs and the others under IPS. But I thought having two systems in place means it will be very difficult to continue using IPS. So I was in the view that probably we were supposed to stick on the initial agreement that, okay, let's brainstorm this issue together and have a common agreement as a region. And then if it will be the issue of maybe abandoning IPS so as to join in PAPs, let's move together. And I understand maybe this, in the technical discussion, probably you had a very depth discussion on this issue, and I'll be ready to be guided on how we can move forward, but also to receive the responses from what we submitted with regards to how to continue implementing PAPs in the presence of existing IPS. Maybe last small item I was looking on page 65, where we have you have put all the member states there. Of course, we continue to encourage and welcoming our colleagues who recently joined the EAC, especially DRC and the Federal Republic of Somalia, whom unfortunately I haven't seen them in the this meeting. However, for DRC, I think last time they didn't attend as well. Now, I don't know, maybe if you had any discussion on how should we continue implementing these milestones and the other area that we have discussed. I thought maybe for those who are not here, if possible, that we can continue implementing these interventions, and the time when they will join, then maybe we can try to request them and see their levels of based on those convergence criteria, and to see how we can expedite implementation of those criteria in order to maybe converge with other member states. By doing so, we'll also be in a good position to fast track the criteria that we agreed, so that by 2031, at least we can be in a position to achieve our common monetary union by that time. I hope God is still on our side. We'll make it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, my concern has been raised by all the honorable governors. So it was about the duplication of the two payment systems, the IPS and the PAPS. And for some member countries, there is even a third payment system. The reps for COMESA I think there is also for SADC countries another payment system. So you are giving a recommendation for PAPs to be used for businesses that are not covered by IPS. So I was wondering if it's possible to identify or to separate some kind of businesses that can be covered by each of these three IPS. Or maybe is there any way all the two payment systems can be merged or interconnected so that maybe we may take advantage of all of them? So that's my comment. And regarding the recommendations that were directed to Burundi, we have taken a good note, and we commit to work on them so that next time when we convene for another MAC meeting, we will have made a significant progress on them. So that was my comment, and thank you, Chair.
Rafael, you can now proceed to provide answers to the questions raised by the governors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Governors. Whoever has, as I answer the questions, whoever has a roving microphone, if you could kindly get for me the chair of the subcommittee on financial markets and payment systems, so that we respond to the issue of payment systems together with them. So I'll start with, and thank you very much, Honorable Governors, for the good guidance and comments on the report. We'll take the guidance on board and work with the heads of delegations to very, very quickly amend the sections of the report that need to be addressed. For example, on page 6, which requires a recommendation to be provided in the area of the convergence criteria, the issues that the Governor CBK raised on page 11 of the document in terms of the consistency of the wording of the recommendations, and then on page 15 of the document, page 19. Now, on the timelines on page 34 that was raised on the Basel core principles, I believe the team on bank supervision and financial stability, we can reduce those timelines to a much shorter period. So we'll again work on that very, very quickly so that we have a shorter period. On page 6 of the issues of PAPs, I want us to combine them together, but if we can have a microphone given first to the person who chaired the Committee on Financial Stability or the rapporteur of that committee to help me give the initial response, and then I will add based on the brief they gave us. Again, Governor, Bank of South Sudan, thank you very much for your undertaking to support the activities we have requested Bank of South Sudan to take the lead on. And as I've indicated, for the areas like page 6 on the convergence criteria, we will do a recommendation. Page 18, we have also taken your comment on that. And then again, the comment you have made with respect to page 21, again, we'll relook at that very, very quickly. The areas where you have indicated requiring more support like ELA, again, we will quickly think through that with the heads of delegation and see, together with the Bank of South Sudan, and see what we can insert in the report to take care of that. The issue of the MOUs, again, the team from bank supervision and financial stability, if you could again be ready to give what is it that has been preventing the signing of the MOUs. Just to help me respond to that, and the same, the other team that is handling CBDC, the payments team, again, help me respond to the question on CBDC. I have my position based on your brief, but it would be good to come from you directly. Again, on the same issue, if you could kindly explain how we can bring on board the partner states that are behind on the issue. The governor from BOT had a very pertinent comment on the currency convertibility. The team on on payment, again, if you can help me give the initial comments on the currency convertibility issue that the Governor Bank of Tanzania has raised. The Governor BOT has also raised the issue of the difficulty in achieving the convergence criteria. Here, Governor, the EAC Secretariat has confirmed to us that the matter has been raised even by the ministers, and what has been done is to request, there is already a request to the IMF to come and help us do an assessment of the achievability of these convergence criteria. What we proposed as senior officials is for us not to rely on only the IMF to do the assessment, but we will look for another research institutions such as the IGC to also do an independent assessment. Then we can compare the two and advise our governors and the ministers on the appropriateness of the convergence criteria as they are now, and how they can effectively be implemented. So there is work in progress, Honorable Governor. The issue of IPS, again, remember the elements the Governor has raised, so kindly help me to start responding to those, and then I can add my views on the same. And then the Governor has also raised the issue of the inclusion of all partner states in the last page of the document and how the implementation. I don't know whether the EAC Secretariat has a response to this. What has happened previously, Governor, is what we do is for partner states that are not attending a meeting, because the EAC decisions are supposed to be arrived at by consensus, we continue with the meeting, but we send the final report to them to also countersign. So once the members who are present do the signature, then we take to them to countersign to indicate that they have ratified the report, and therefore the decisions that have been made are then binding on them. But of course, once they start coming in, we believe that they have, some of them like DRC have already finalized the integration plan with the EAC Secretariat. We believe they'll do the same with Somalia, and therefore going forward, we will work with them to support them in integrating. The Governor Bank of Burundi has also raised concern with the duplication of the payment systems. Again, the payment system team, please take the first shot. And thank you, Governor, again for committing to support us in the areas that we have requested. So could I first have the microphone, the roving microphone to the payments team? The chair of the payments team, or any member that is volunteering.
Thank you, Raphael, and dear governors. I'm going to comment on the issue of foreign convertibility of the EAC, foreign currencies. We are coming from a journey where we executed an MOU some time back, to the extent that the countries would be free to collect currencies of the partner states from the commercial banks and give value in return to those banks so that they can do their correspondence transactions. And each of the partner states was required to have an operational account in the other partner state. So I think I'll give you the example of, say, Bank of Uganda and CBK. So Bank of Uganda has an operational account at CBK. and the banks can freely bring Kenya shillings, the central bank, and value is given by the Bank of Uganda. The problem that there is that on the other side, at CBK, the operational account for Bank of Uganda may not have money on it. That would be Kenya shillings. So in some circumstances, would be forced to sometimes sell reserves to make that settlement. Because the requirement is to repatriate, collect, say, Kenya shillings and repatriate. Usually, it's a process. So as the repatriation takes place, you might find you don't have money on the operational account at CBK. And the circumstances could request you to fund it using reserves. So we have made two proposals. The first proposal is keeping the status quo as it is. Countries continue to repatriate currency. The second proposal is a consideration for the other partner state to give credit as the money is being awaited for. But that requires a joint meeting of the other committees involving technical officers from the other working groups, say from financial stability, economic research, financial markets, payments, to put our heads together. So I've arranged a meeting to discuss those two options, and then we should be able to report in the next meeting. Thank you.
On the issue of CBDC's honorable governors, what the EAC Secretariat has helped us with is to seek technical assistance from the IMF on this so that we can come up with a common approach on CBDCs. So we are hoping that TA is going to help us address a number of issues that the governors have raised on CBDCs as we go forward. Any last comment from the chairs of the other subcommittees?
Honorable Governors, I'm going to take explanation on the issue of IPS and PAPS. According to the directive that we had on the previous MAC meetings, we were supposed to approach this integration with PAPS at the regional context, whereby we as subcommittee agreed that we are going to discuss with PAPS, looking at the participation agreement, at the same time taking into context what we have done so far towards EAC integration by having IPS in place. We raised the issues of concern from the partner states, whereby we expected them to be addressed by PAPS in the technical committee to meet again and agreed on the way forward. Very unfortunate, our big brother started by signing an agreement with PAPS, and that followed by other two partner states. That means they have moved from the regional approach to bilateral agreement. In that way, we discussed in our technical committee meetings and decided that much as we have, some of the partner states have already signed the agreement, and much as the issues that we raised were very important, have not been well addressed by PAPS, what should we do to move forward? So moving forward is to make sure that we protect our IPS system that we have already established by making sure that, because IPS will operate is operating in local currencies, and also is a platform that is already well structured and is functional. So we need to protect it in such a way that if the payment is being done by the EAC partner states, sender and receiver is within the partner states, then the settlement has to be done through IPS. So in case there's a payment that goes outside the EAC member states who are already in IPS, let's say the payment is going to the Ivory Coast, to Egypt, to Ghana, to Nigeria, where is out of the context of IPS, then that payment can be settled through PAPS. And further, we discuss and agree that since the PAPs provide for two models, central bank model and commercial banks model, it's best if we engage with them in a commercial bank model because there's less risk and exposure for the central bank to be involved in a central bank model, and also to continue engaging on issues of the oversight that were not well addressed by the submission from the PAPS team to EAC partner states. So that is what we discussed, and that is our recommendation there. As you can see, really the second bullet is emphasizing that we should not compromise what we have put in place so far, that is protecting IPS. And I know one of the governor raised the issue of IPS 2. That is still a concept, and the IPS 2 is targeting to have a central platform. And there's no way we can be able to achieve that if we are not going to have an institute in place whereby the central platform will be residing and operated. What we have now, we have joined our RTGSs to be able to facilitate IPS payments. And for the issue of the CBDC governance, we know that we have studied CBDC in our markets, and we have not found any a useful use case for us to move forward with the CBDC. But a lot of studies have been done and show a lot of potential of CBDC for cross-border payments. So what is the ask here is to approve, engage with technical assistance on capacity building, on cross-border, focusing on cross-border, and also to prototype if there's a use case that can be a potential for CBDC consideration as a solution for EAC partner states in the near future. Thank you, governors. That's how it submits.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the lead from Financial Stability and Bank Supervision to explain to the governors the issue with MOUs.
Thank you, governors. The issue of MOUs is there are quite a number of countries who are the home regulators of some of the banks operating in the East African community. The partner states, central banks have initiated MOUs with those home country regulators. There were quite a number of delays. When the National Bank of Rwanda was the regional chair of the ASCB, they offered to follow up with those central banks. ASCB, in the process, they wrote to each of the central banks to provide the lists of those pending proposed MOUs. So, so far, some of the partner state central banks have written to ASCB, and they have followed up, and we've since received responses. But there are still two central banks from the East Africa who are yet to write to ASCB. So the issue is some of those central banks are outside the EAC, and we believe ASCB, given that all the governors normally meet during the meetings of ASCB, that is where those can be taken up, so that we have those arrangements of information sharing and collaboration in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruben. So, Honorable Chair, Honorable Governors, so with those responses, I would like to request that you give us just a few minutes to incorporate some of the comments, and then we will bring the document for you to sign within the next 10 minutes. In the meantime, if the chair allows, we would like to circulate to you a draft communique to be released after this meeting. I'm sure the press and the whole of the EAC would like to know what the governors have discussed. So you could kindly scan through and let us know if there are any amendments that you would like us to do, then we will do that quickly, and if you can then kindly sign for us. Yeah, this one's.
Okay, we can proceed.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. Functional issues on 3 and 4, but those one I'll give them to you. Where I have one comment, which is, it is on paragraph 8, and that is in light of the comment that we made earlier. In the report, we made a reference to page 6, where we look at the convergence criteria, and we resolve that we should find a way to make a recommendation on what we need to do going forward to the 2028 and then to the 2031. So maybe here I could say we need to insert a language on paragraph 8 that says something like, resolve to review the convergence criteria as we move toward 2028. Something along those lines. That's the comment that I would like to make. With this, let me invite the other governors if they have comments to share. Representative from Uganda, Dr. Adam.
Sorry, a minor one on paragraph 2. Is it possible to say where we say continue to higher central bank policy rates, to clarify that this is in some of the major central banks? I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. And the next line where we say continue the exchange rate pressures arising, can we say partly arising from stronger US dollar? I don't know whether that is okay. And then the last one on 3, where we say performance was supported by stronger growth in industry services. I'm a bit hesitant to, is it possible to generalize and say all sectors rather than mentioning? Otherwise, I thought in some of our countries agriculture performed better also. I don't know what you think. Although it is similar also in paragraph 4. I submit, Chair.
Okay, Chair, thank you very much. I had 2 concerns. One was on item 2, where I thought maybe there has been an issue with regards to adverse impact of climate change, which has also contributed to shortage of forex in different countries, and which has also created a pressure on the exchange rates. So I thought if we can also include the issue of adverse impact of climate change. Then I was trying to brainstorm myself that we have received a presentation from IMF. I don't know if it can also be included, if before even taking note of the economic performance of the EAC, because among other issues we have received or we have seen some statistics from the presentations that was made by Sebastian from IMF. So I was trying just to think on those lines if need be, but it's just my thought. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Kamau.
I think just the communique covers the it's quite positive about the growth outturn and growth prospects. And then that's in paragraph 3 and to a certain extent paragraph 4. And then we also talk about inflation and how inflation has come down. And we are doing quite well there. But I think we have quite a number of challenges that are not maybe mentioned. Yes, growth is good and inflation has come down, at least headline inflation has come down, but I think there are quite a number of countries that are feeling pressures on the exchange rate and, I don't know, even pressures on building up international reserves. I think there was also the observation that even with this, I think maybe we need to introduce another paragraph where we are saying, yes, the growth prospects are good, inflation also we've done fairly well, but we also see risks. I think these risks of commodity prices, I think, which also came up in the IMF presentation, and specifically the potential increase in fuel prices, which could have really a ripple effect even on our growth prospects and also inflation prospects. I find it's missing. So the community is I think is a bit too, I don't know whether the word is optimistic and doesn't quite recognize the actual risks, that we're facing. I thought maybe that could be covered a bit more. I think that's it.
Dr. Thierry?
Mine is a minor one on paragraph 3. The growth numbers quoted here says 2023. But I believe these are in fiscal year. So if it can be clarified that it's fiscal year 22-23, or if not, then to adjust the numbers to the calendar year's number. But I believe these are fiscal years. That's a minor one. Thanks.
Okay, from here, we have provided our comments, so you can proceed.